this panel. PLG, GTM, all of this is something we discuss a lot. We debate about the definitions, we debate about what it is, what is the future, and I'm super excited to bring the experts here who are going to help us resolve a lot of these questions, and we'll deep dive in. So we'll start with some intros, and then we'll keep the questions to about 40 minutes and leave most of the time for AMAs. So you guys please keep your questions ready, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. Okay, so Rajiv, why don't you start with a quick intro?
Hey, I'm Rajiv. I'm the CEO at Product Hunt. Before that, I started a company and launched a bunch of things. Some didn't do well, some did pretty well.
Mike, you want to connect?
Do you mind? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. My name is Michael Hoy. Up until about last week, I was Vice President of Sales at Pendo, which is a product analytics and user guidance company. And in about 2 weeks, I will be the CEO of Atlas, which is a low-code billing infrastructure company for SaaS and AI companies.
Congratulations.
Hey. Does that work? Nope. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Hey everybody, I'm Elaine, Zelby, co-founder of Tofu. We're a generative AI company that automates top of funnel for B2B marketing and sales teams. Prior to this, I spent a while on the venture capital side, so now I've crossed onto the better side and having a lot of fun. Much better.
Hi all, I'm Darius. I'm Chief Growth Officer at Otter.ai. Many of you might know us from the extra square in your meetings. We log into meetings and record, transcribe, summarize, and allow you to do meeting Gen AI, like ChatGPT, across all your meetings, and keep track of all your vocal content for you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Estreich. I'm a partner at Pear VC. We're an early stage VC fund on the dark side. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time on the light side. I was an operator at Facebook, Fox, Intercom, and a company called Scalar that was in the DevOps space, and then started Market One, which was an early stage venture fund and community helping founders elevate marketing and think about how to not just build a great product, but also think about distribution in the early days.
Hi everyone, I'm Jaspar. I'm the founder of Artisan. We create AI employees called Artisans and then consolidated software that replaces the tools that them and human teams would normally use. We started with Ava. You might have seen her face. She has laser eyes now. She's an AI BDR, and then we have this consolidated software platform that automates everything in outbound sales.
Awesome. Okay, so let's dive into the questions. So for the first question, Rajiv, I'd love for you to define what is product-led growth. Like, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of questions, like what exactly does that mean? So why don't you just help us with the definition, like what is product-led?
I don't know if I'm the best person to describe this. Most of what I know is product-led growth. Before Product Hunt, I started a company, Tandem, which is a virtual office for remote teams. It's a horizontal tool, and then before that I worked in consumer apps, like consumer productivity apps. So most of what I'm familiar with is product-led growth. I'll defer to somebody else to define it. But
Kathleen, do you want to take a shot?
Oh, I think Elaine should do it.
Go ahead. Okay. I'll actually tell you one thing that I think is interesting about this, and I want everyone else's take. So let's take a show of hands. Is there a material difference between bottoms-up growth, self-serve motion, and PLG? Because I think it's been a rebranding.
Yeah.
I think that this has been around for a long time, and it's been a rebranding, quite frankly. This is not new. People have been doing bottoms-up, people have been doing self-serve, but in my opinion, product-led growth, and now we have this whole concept of product-led sales, which is a little bit different, but product-led growth is using your product to allow users to come in, try, whether it's free or not, and actually move through the funnel. So being able to do that using product features and using product nudges and tooltips and things like that.
maybe the self-serve is the requirement, but then product-led growth is when your growth is mainly driven by that motion.
Correct. I think the requirement is a user without the need for a human on the vendor side can come in, use the product, again, whether they put in a credit card or not, and then self-serve.
Mike, how would you define it in terms of when you guys at Pendo enable product-led? So, and you guys are also sales-led. So how would you feel, like, what is the difference between the sales-led motions and the product-led motion? What exactly is enabling product-led?
And I actually think there are plenty of different ways to think about this, so there's no right answer. In fact, when you say product-led, I think about free samples at Costco, and that is the best product-led motion. But at Pendo, at Pendo, we defined product-led growth as something that actually involved every specific department within the business. And it all circled around how the product actually drove more revenue into the business. Now that could be through a self-serve motion, that could be through free trials, that could be through upsell, cross-sell inside of our own product, whether you gate or feature flag or put up guidance and guides in new parts of the application that people hadn't used. When we used product-led growth as a North Star, we talked about it in terms of customer success. How are you using the product to facilitate your growth goals? Sales, how are you using the product to facilitate your growth goals? Product, engineering, how are you supporting those in terms of what you're building and the timelines that you're hitting? So when done really well, when we did it really well, it was a full company effort that just circled around the product.
Right. And Darius, you guys also at Otter, one of the main ways others find you is people share Otter notes and all of that. Do you want to dive into how you guys are thinking about it?
Yeah, sure thing. Part of my definition of product-led growth is that the product kind of sells itself. Like classically, someone would manufacture a product, then you have a sales team go out to the world and be like, hey, do you want the thing we built? But in the product-led growth, the product actually often goes out into the world and says, hey, look what I can do for you. And so the most obvious, product-led examples are often like the viral examples. So like, when you use Zoom, someone's like, hey, try this Zoom link. You're like, what's this? I know how to click a link. And if you can click a link, now you can do a VC call. And like Otter is a kind of similar way, like, hey, I'm doing a VC with you. Do you mind if my Otter joins? And then records it. And now you have a copy, I have a copy. We can refer back to it. And it just makes my life better, and maybe it'll make your life better. And then you see that a few times, and you want it for yourself. And so, product-led growth is kind of interesting. You do need a few aspects to make it really functional. You do need a product that is. So yeah, this me competing with AI is like a little version. Yeah, little bot stop. But there's some things you need for a product-led growth product to really work. One thing is you need a low enough price point that someone can self-serve into it. Usually, even if you have a corporate card, usually can't really be charging $5,000 charges against that card. So you need something where you can pay a few $100, maybe a few $1,000 that you can buy yourself. Also something that you can get on board with and set up pretty quickly. Like you don't need too much of a security review, you don't need your whole company to buy into it. So there's definitely some qualifications to like what you can really make product-led. People want to kind of bolt it on later, but it often needs to be baked into the product itself. So when we built Otter, like from the earliest days, we said, hey, we want people to just push a button and start seeing a transcript of the words they're saying directly on the page. That's another part of PLG, is ideally it's a product experience where instantaneously you see the value and you have kind of a visceral reaction that this is something that I could use myself. And so if you can get that, there's a chance that even in that little picture of the product you get while seeing it on the web or seeing it that your friend is using it, you get excited about it, explore more, and then the activation energy and the cost is so low that you're like, I'm just going to start using it myself, and then on and on and on. At least the viral motion. You can have, PLG without the viral motion, but that is one of the strongest ways.
Yeah.
I was going to say one other component to product-led growth that's really important in the early days, because this is what we see on product hunt. Like we see companies launching at the very beginning and some of them reaching escape velocity. And something that I think people miss is how important clarity is in a tagline. I think with the early tagline, we all know that tagline is like our shot to have the product sell itself, have the promise of the product be so clear that people try it, tell their friends. This is what they tell their friends, right? But I think where a lot of people go wrong is they try to make it really grand. And in doing that, they often lose clarity. And clarity is really important because I can't tell a friend what your product is, your product can't go viral. So I was pulling up Otter's original launches. And
You brought the receipts?
yeah, the first one is so clear, I love it. Remember, search, and share your voice conversations.
What year was that? When was that?
Oh, that was, yeah, it was a while ago. And in the early days, like it's not, I mean, maybe don't use platform, maybe don't use like universal blank, just be really specific and clear. And the other advantage is, even if somebody isn't your target user, if they know what you do and they can understand who you're for, they can tell a friend. They can tell the friend who's that user.
As a VC, I see the pitch deck, which is the vision. Then I go look at the website and they shipped the vision onto the website. Don't ship your vision onto the website because, to your point, that's not what you have today and it doesn't solve a problem and it's not clear who it's for. So I think getting that as a founder in particular, if you're like, okay, I have to go sell this VC that it's going to be $1 billion business, great, I want to see that. But then when I look at, your customer doesn't give a shit. And so they care about like, what is it, who's it for, why should I care? And so I think it's like knowing the altitude by which you're playing at. And the number of websites that I've looked at where I'm like, I literally do not know what this company does. And you can do that when you're established, where like you look on the Stripe website, like everyone knows who Stripe is at this point. They couldn't do some of the stuff that they can do now because they didn't have the brand recognition. And so I think particularly if you're launching on a product hunt where it's new to the market, like think about no one knows who you are. And so don't ship your pitch deck, ship what your customers will know you for.
One thing too, I just want to reiterate, I think you made a really, really astute point around one of the things that makes a successful PLG motion is time to value. And I think that you could do PLG by having a cheap price point and by clarity of vision or clarity of what you offer, but the time to value for that user is what makes things successful and what can trigger something to go viral.
This is a, whether it's B2C, but especially B2B, like these two things are critical. Put yourself in your buyer's shoes. If they can't go to their CFO and clearly and very crisply explain what your product does, then they will get laughed out of the room, right? And if they're not able to quickly show their CFO the value that they are getting, right? If their CFO goes, wow, how long did that take? 9 months. Yeah, get out of here, right? So speed and clarity, 100% from a B2B perspective, but I assume B2C as well.
So Jaspar, coming to you,
Yeah.
for early stage startups, like you obviously started the company recently,
Yes.
like how early did you have to make this decision? Like, do you want to be a product-led growth company? Is it as to, he said, the price point or it's a type of product? Like, what led you to make those decisions?
Yeah, well, we made the wrong decision. We went product-led and it was just like a shit show, like high churn, like low. Like we had a really long time to value. Because like we created an AI BDR, Ava automates outbound, but to get responses from outbound, you have to put like a lot of work in. Like your domains have to warm up, you have to figure out what messaging works, and it takes like weeks and weeks and weeks. So we would have customers onboarding, we did like a 4-week free trial, but even in the 4 weeks, like your domains warm up on week 3, so by week 4 you've seen the results, you're like, okay, I'm canceling. So like we tried product-led for 4 months, and it just like did not work. And we switched to sales-led, and we were like suddenly were growing like 60-70% month over month. So we made the wrong decision. So I'd say listen to their advice. Time to value, we had like a maybe 6-7 week time to value, which is like an instant no-go. We were doing cheaper plans, but because they were cheaper, we had to do lower volume. So we were doing like less leads of outreach, so that people were getting less responses, so they weren't getting that much value without spending a lot. And they really needed to be explained how to use the product to set up like their domains, set up all the DNS settings. So we had like the worst possible product for product-led, but we did it anyway. But then switching to sales-led, we now have like AEs, we have like a sales team, that motion works really, really well for us.
Why did you do it then?
Because I thought it would be right. So we were under the impression that we would be able to get a higher response rate for people. So we thought that the lower cost plans and maybe like with a bit of handholding they could get set up and running. But like the reality was they need to send like a lot of emails to actually get responses, and you need to spend a lot more money to get that like level of results.
What was the time to value with sales-led?
Time to value with sales-led is the same. Like it takes them still like a month, 2 months to get value, but they're fine with it because they've done an annual contract. So it's like they expect to wait and they expect to have to put a lot of work in to get results. So they're fine with it when it's a sales-led, but yeah. And we quadrupled our pricing as well when we switched to sales-led, which is nice.
Yes.
This
Fun
is
fact.
this is something that we learned at Pendo, and then Clay, my co-founders in the audience, that we are practicing and applying here at Atlas is, very quickly we learned at Pendo as we went full bore into product led that, oh my goodness, our users do not want to be product led. So like, one of our biggest learnings was like, go talk to your users. Go like really work through how they implement the application. Is it complicated? Not every application is going to be a few clicks and it's up and moving, right? And for Clay and I, like we're launching billing infrastructure. Right? That is probably not going to be product led, but we're having conversations around what can we offer that helps attract people at the top of our funnel. Right? That is very simple to deploy and brings them into our billing infrastructure ecosystem. So know your customers, know how they want to use the application. Not everybody wants to be product led.
I also will have, when they were asking me to join the panel, I was like, just FYI, we are not product led and we will not be product led. I'm like, I've been at Slack, I've been at product led companies. And on the VC side, I looked at every PLG CRM under the sun, looked at all these companies that were pitching us on how their motion was going to be PLG. My take is that for the vast majority of companies, B2B companies, 80+%, they cannot and should not be product led. There are a few reasons that we've already articulated. Jaspar had a few. Time to value, price point, things like that. But some of the bigger things are, if the value of your product touches sensitive information or has any semblance of an integration to an internal tool, you cannot be product led. Quite frankly, you can't. And I can't tell you how many startups pitched me of, yes, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna launch this PLG thing first, and that's gonna get people in the door, and then they're gonna integrate. But at the end of the day, if the value comes with touching sensitive information or doing any kind of integration, you can't. The other things on this too is, you really cannot, I've never seen, and I'd love a counterexample, do a successful PLG and enterprise motion. At Slack, when I was there, I got brought on to do enterprise go-to-market when they were launching Enterprise Grid. Obviously, Slack is a fantastic company, got acquired, all that, but they were not able to pull off a successful enterprise motion because it's a PLG company. They had the PLG motion, they had the PLG price point for them, that was their model, makes sense. But trying to do both also is not a great model either. So a lot of times companies say, well, we are an enterprise product, we're gonna have this expensive price point, here's what we're gonna do, but we're gonna launch this like light version, or like a little free version or something to get people in the door. Usually will not work. So again, I think you have to pick your channel. We should all come up with a matrix based off of some of these things, like checkboxes to see where you fall, and that might help save you from some of the mistakes we've all made.
Wait, I'm not by far an expert on this, but weren't Zoom and Figma two kind of notable counterexamples where they started with really strong product-led growth and then layered on a very successful sales motion?
I disagree. I think you can do both. I think you can't do both when you start because you have to pick one to start. But I think it's much easier to go product-led and then move up market to get enterprise. I think it's really hard to start enterprise and try and go down market to be PLG. It never works because the ACVs never make sense when you could go after enterprise whales. But I do think there are, to your point, good examples of companies that started product-led, moved up market, and then closed the enterprise deals. But I think going the other way never works.
Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges that like a lot of people see, that a lot of people use product-led companies all the time. And it's like, oh, I use Slack, I use Zoom, and so they're like, I'm going to be like that. That's kind of the model, right? But then you don't immediately see and use all these like much larger volume of sales-led companies. And so there is this attraction to PLG, but it doesn't work for a lot of companies for the reasons outlined here. I think you can do it later, but you really have to invest in it. And it's really a switch. Like I think these companies that did it, it was grinding up the gears because a lot of the kind of motions that you learn, you have to kind of undo. And like you start fighting with the sales team, like, is that the self-serve head of revenue or is that your revenue? Like, whose revenue is it? And there's a lot of things, and it really takes like years to build that motion, and it's almost impossible to go the other way. Like if you're, Aaron Levy and you put your A team on like the free product, it's not gonna work out well in almost all cases. And so it is a real challenge, but you can look at a really fantastic business either way. And either way, I think all companies should be always driving down time to value. Like even some sales-led companies that I work with, like when their onboarding is like hours instead of days, I'm like, okay, you all are doing it right.
because you want to get to that like first month and feel like we have a win. And you want to be like thinking about how do we make like every interaction like showing the win that we already have.
This is one more thing I'd say. As somebody who comes from building like consumer productivity tools and somebody who loves building rich experience products, like products that people spend a lot of time in, there's something unique about product-led growth in which it pulls out a great UX from the product. And I think I'm part of this, my last company, Tandem, was part of this generation of like consumer founders moving into like collaboration software, where I think a lot of us had an extremely pure idea of product-led growth, and we're very idealistic about it. And maybe too much so, like very hardcore, didn't do any marketing, like refused to do any marketing. And I think that was maybe a little too extreme.
I think that a lot of the product-led growth stuff and a lot of growth is marketing rebranded because people don't want to talk about marketing.
Okay, so now that we are an early stage startup, we decided we are early, so we are either going to be sales-led or product-led. This is pretty early for us. So what is the next step? Like, how do we decide when to launch? And this is going to obviously be for Rajiv. Like, when is it too early to launch?
Tonight at 12:01.
Oh yeah, that's a plug for us. We are launching tonight in Product Contract.
I mean, as soon as possible. I think there's no better way to test like whether people want it. And
So
you're
one
gonna
of
launch many times.
one of the things I heard from Shopify team is one of the myths is if you launch really early, you may get good feedback, but the bar for users is really high. The churn is going to be high, and just launching an idea is not enough. And the way users expect your product, they expect it to work, they expect the integration, they expect like their data or everything to be connected. So at this stage, like when it's not about like making tech software is not like that difficult anymore, it's not like that novel. So at that point, is it just more of the getting the idea across, it's getting the whole workflow? Like, how would you decide for most companies?
I mean, it's hard to speak in generalities, but I'd say when to launch as early as possible, but you have to launch something good. But launching as early as possible helps you, like, forces you to think about what is the minimum good thing.
Ellie, what would your opinion be like? What was your first recent launch?
Oh man, I'm of the mindset too, where you should be embarrassed by the thing you launch first. That's how I'm still embarrassed on a daily basis by our product. I mean, it's one of those things that never goes away. I don't think it ever will, even big companies. But it's so useful to get feedback. You also find, and this is something I think Product Hunt has just really brought out of people, is you find your passionate early adopters. And they will make you feel better always, but also just really help guide what you should be doing, prioritize your roadmap, figure out how to bring time to value down, do better customer support, all that kind of stuff. So I'm of the mindset too, like early yes, but what is good? It's like, I don't even know. Nothing is ever like good enough.
I'm totally actually with you because there's no point you'll never be embarrassed of your product. You just want to be like, okay, at some point you have to launch.
And shockingly, people are really patient. So Tofu launched end of the year, and we started onboarding customers in the beginning of the year now. And we, shockingly, despite not even having a lot of the security checkboxes, have a few public companies as customers. And you would be shocked at how patient and excited they still are. I'm like right in the face, like things aren't working, like they're clicking a button, they get an error. The error looks like it was made for a PhD in CS, not a marketer. And, you know, I'm just kind of covering my eyes, and they're still so excited about the product. So I think sometimes we just have to take a step back and realize that if you're building something that has true value to people and you're really trying to push the boundaries of what is possible for them and making their lives easier, people will have a lot of patience and also be really willing to give you feedback.
Jaspar, coming to you. So how did you get your first customer and how did you scale from there? So we know, obviously, you tried product-led, you tried this, but what exactly was your approach to get your first customer?
Yeah, the first customer, because we do like an AI BDR product, we were trying to target people who did cold email. So just like replying to people who were sending us cold emails, being like, you don't have to do this, we can do it instead. So that's how we got like 20. And then we did like you know what it actually was? It was rage baiting on Reddit. That's how we got our first like 1,000 leads. Just like writing really rage baiting posts that would go viral on Reddit, on subreddits. Just annoying people being like, I'm 22 and we just raised 1.5 million without any product. And then people would like rage comment and share it. And then we got like thousands of waitlist signups from that. I feel like just whatever you do, it has to have a hook. Like it has to be interesting. Like even if it's going to annoy some people, just make some noise.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like anything to go viral, and it doesn't matter how the first customer comes from. But then how do you scale from there? Like, what is a repeatable model for you?
Yeah, we have a bunch of channels now. Like a lot comes from SEO. We do a lot of blog content. We publish like 4 a week. Tina there does them, manages the content writers. That's a big channel for us. We do a lot of very cringy LinkedIn content. You pour your soul, you rip your soul out. It's fine. But like, I think the main thing is just we tried every channel and just figured out what worked well for us. And like organic social works really well. Some paid newsletter sponsorships work really well. SEO works really well, and just like paid ads on our competitors' names, that works well. And yeah, that's our strategy now for the most part.
Darius, what about Otter? How did Otter go?
I mean, just building on what you were both saying about like when you launch, like I think if you're really raw innovating, you can be both embarrassed and have something really valuable at the same time, right? Because it's just like so out there that obviously it's like raw, but people are like, oh, I don't have any other tool to do this. And that was Otter, 5-6 years ago. Of like, it was like the only way to actually get an instant transcription of what you're doing. Like, we were so early that like Zoom used us for transcription for years. And so like that raw innovation is one way to capture the market, but there's no other way to do this. And then it goes a little bit viral just because people hear about it, they talk about it, especially if you have like quick time to value demo and you're doing something like relatively simple, but hard and very well. And so that's one way we kind of spread. And then more recently, we realized that there's certain people who really need this. Obviously for accessibility, like, if you're hard of hearing, it's fundamentally important so that you can get a transcription of what was said, so that you can participate. And so we found that heads of accessibility really needed that. Then we also found that like certain people, like if you have a lot of external conversations, like if you're, working client services or consulting, or you're a journalist, we got really viral with journalists because it'd be like, oh, how are you recording all your calls? And people used to actually use physical recorders, little like mini tapes and stuff like that. With Otter, now they can use their phone or their computer to do it. So these were like must-have use cases, not, meetings is a little more nice to have. Like I take my own notes or I can use Otter notes, but this was kind of like a must-do case that they're already spending money on. So we eventually found that, those people really needed us. And then as we grew the product, and also we made it more and more collaborative, now Otter is really like a place where multiple people can collaborate on meetings. Like I'll all the time go through like the sales calls, like even as they're happening, I'll like watch what people are saying. I'll do searches through them to find interesting feature ideas and see how many people are interested in those features. And now it's kind of a collaborative environment, so it's really grown from what it was before. And so now we're much more attractive to just groups of people working together. I'm not sure if we can say that one, but like very high up in the government, in some cases they actually use Otter to keep track of like what like people are saying, even like people you see like on Twitter and stuff like that. And so it's really interesting to see like just people need this kind of recording for different meetings, but those ICPs were very sequential. And so like, I'm sure that like there's probably certain people who need like an AI SDR more than other people, and it might be like a really tech forward, very small company with maybe no one doing that job right now. And then as the technology matures, it might be that larger companies who see you as like an add-on, the ICP changes with time. So one of my friends, James Currier at NFX, talks about finding the white hot center of your market. Not just the hot center, but the white hot, like boiling over with need center of your market. Like what's that ICP? And if you can find them at all with like Google Ads, conferences, cold outreach, they'll just like immediately reach back and immediately pay, or at least at a much higher rate than anyone else. So that's one of the places you find the first set of people.
You actually just reminded me of something that. To ask you a question. One thing on that, I think that sometimes people fall back onto PLG as a crutch for not knowing who their ICP is. I think when you are doing more of like a sales-led motion or enterprise, you need to know the white hot center, you need to know who, and then you need to, the goal of the go-to-market team is to identify who are these people and then where do they live in the physical and digital world and get in front of them with a clear and concise message. Now, I've just seen so many companies be like, we're figuring that out, so we're gonna go and just like throw this out in the world and throw spaghetti at the wall and see who comes in. Now, I've also seen this go wrong in so many ways because the people who come in might not be your ICP. And so now you get this false signal from a certain group of people. You might have experienced this.
Yes.
You go in one direction and you're like, oh shit, we like definitely veered left when we should have stayed the course or something like that. So I also just think it's a misleading crutch.
Oh, I just want to ask to build off that point for the Otter example. Did you guys go actively identify like the journalists, the accessibility people, or were they all coming inbound and you started to see clusters of them? Like which came first?
I like to think that we were specifically searching out these people, but we've actually always been a company that's a little more engineering driven, and we want to build like powerful capabilities and then bring them into the world. And so I think actually we put it out there, and we did some big deals, like I said earlier, with Zoom. But then we found the greatest response from some of these people. So there is kind of a combo where you can broadcast a little bit and see what kind of response you get. But then you really have to, like the first thing I do when I go into companies to help them grow, I'm like, what is working? And like if they don't know, kind of like look more and more closely at the data. And oftentimes they'll be like, oh, well, like these people like instantly bought it. I don't know why. It's like, find out why, and there often are those. So I think for Otter, it was both. We didn't necessarily have all of it in mind.
So two major points in a story. First and foremost, like the ICP piece is very important, right? And it's not just knowing your ICP, it's that everyone inside of the business internalizes that. If you're an early stage business and not everyone inside of your business is customer facing, then you are risking that not everyone knows who your ICP is. And so it's something we did at Pendo, it's something that Clay and I do at Atlas, is if you're a front-end developer, you're on customer calls. If you're a back-end developer, you're on customer calls, right? Clay and I are on customer calls, our head of product and lead designer, she's on customer calls. We all get to understand who the ICP is. That way, when the wrong ICP comes in, we all feel very comfortable saying no. And this really embodied itself at Pendo. We were in between Series A and Series B, so think like somewhere between 15 and 25 million, and we won Facebook as a customer. Facebook wanted us to come in and be their analytics provider, and they did not fit our ICP. The only person who was upset when we made that decision was the sales rep who made the sale. We still paid him out because he did a great job. But think of how dejecting that could have been for everybody in our business, for our CEO to stand in front of everybody and say, even though we won that Facebook deal, so sorry, we are saying no. But he said no when we all said, hell yeah. That's not who we're serving, not right now at least, right? And we moved forward and, without that deal, raised our B and then C and then D and E. And so a lot of success will come from everybody within the business internalizing who the right person for that product is.
So that does sound hard, especially for most early stage founders saying no. Kathleen, how would you suggest early stage founders think about this? When do you actually say no? When is it like a parallel path, which may be the right product and maybe you're not chasing the exact idea? How do you say no and how do you choose which is right?
I think that Pendo example is great because I was at Box when we signed GE as a customer. It was a $4 million deal and it derailed the whole company. We went public a year later, but it took all resources across the whole company. There'd be 2 people from Box and 20 people from GE on these calls, and it took every team, every engineering thing. I ran platform marketing. We couldn't get any products built because we all had to focus on GE. It just totally derailed everything. And so I think you have to know who is your customer, who is your ICP, and if you let in one of these folks who does not fit that, it can completely derail all resources. So I think you have to understand, and there's a customer discovery, you can maintain that relationship, but you have to bring them on when you're actually ready, because I think it can kill startups and it can kill, your whole product roadmap for the next 6 to 12 months if you're building for one customer. And it's so easy for these big companies to be like, go build me all these things that I want. And they don't care about you and your company and your, ability to grow and get traction. They just care about solving that problem, and they see you as a way to do that. I'll give one more example. My last startup that I worked at before I started Market One was in the DevOps space. It's called Scalar. We had 2 customers, one of them being Grab, which is basically the Uber of Southeast Asia. Grab just took off. So we were a log management company. Grab took off, we took off. At the time, Datadog had a metrics product. They had acquired a logging product, but it wasn't very good. And we were a logging product that was really good. But we didn't innovate on our product for 12 months because Grab grew too quickly, and we just had to focus on infrastructure and keeping them alive. And so I think it also, you might have gotten a customer and then maybe they are not the right fit to stay a customer. And that's also really hard revenue to walk away from. But I think, at the end of the day, you as a founder or you as someone on the go-to-market team who's maniacally focused on, who is our customer, who is our ICP, and how do we build lasting revenue and continue to build a product that is not just for 1 or 2 people, but for millions of people with hopefully billions of revenue. I think it's really hard to make these calls, but you need to stay true to who is our ICP? Does this make sense today? And it's hard because I've seen the good and the bad. I've seen the good and the bad, but I would say not all revenue is created equal. And as a VC, I'm looking at, okay, if you just have, we had to, at Scalar, separate our business. The way we looked at it, we had 2 really big customers and a broad set of everyone else. And if you looked at it all blended, the data was very misleading. And so I think for you, it's figuring out, okay, what is my business and how do we get, it's super risky to have, 1 or 2 folks who just dominate everything. And so as a VC, that's scary revenue to me versus, 100 customers, maybe a little bit less revenue, but that tells me that maybe you can, continue to nurture them and upsell them. And Elaine and I were talking about net retention earlier, grow with those customers, but then your revenue is far less risky.
Yeah, I think that's true too, but I think when you're at the very earliest stage, if you're not selling to people who are having control of your resources and who can't say, I want this, I think if you're a very early stage startup selling into companies who aren't going to have any control, if they are to not necessarily be your ICP fit by letting everyone on at the very beginning, you can kind of figure out who is successful. So when we were starting out, we would literally let anyone on. And we kind of had some people who were successful who we did not think would be, and learned that our ICP wasn't exactly what we thought it was by letting people who weren't our ICP on. So I think if they're not enterprise, then you can let them come on and fail if they're bad.
But you didn't change the product for them.
No. If you're changing the product, fuck that.
Yeah.
I agree with some of those points as well when you're early. I think for us, we definitely did not think we were ready for public companies, and quite frankly, the product's not. But what we started doing and implementing as part of the sales process to make sure that we are not going to divert resources or cannibalize other revenue opportunities is we do an executive alignment session prior to signing a contract. We actually have a whole little mini deck where it's a real-time Mad Libs fill in the blanks where we align with the buyer on expectations. And this single change has been so impactful for us on what happens when somebody gets onboarded. Because now we are very transparent with our capabilities. We are also very transparent with our short and medium-term roadmap. We are also very transparent with here's what you can expect to see. Here are things you might want to see, but we cannot promise those. So for us, and this is something that I think Jaspar mentioned before, people always want to say well, is this going to book me more revenue or book me more meetings or things like that? And the reality is we can't control that because if a customer is coming in and they're creating bad content or they don't know their ICP or whatever, I can't fix that problem. And so we really wanted to move away from that and make sure we're aligned on things we can control. Once we started doing that, even some of these giant companies that have onboarded 18 teams, it's fine because we can do what we can do and they're happy with it. But it hasn't forced us to go and kind of derail anything. But it's given us great feedback, and it's also given us intel as to when we continue to move up market, A, what are the features we need, but B, is this a better fit for us than mid-market or not?
So that I think was very helpful, but 1000% align with the buyer.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And for you, especially like you guys do sell public companies, so how does your roadmap change when, like, if some company wants a certain feature? Are you guys actively looking at that, or you guys are okay saying no?
We have a backlog, and then we also monthly reprioritize everything. So for us, there's certain things that enterprises need. For example, we have not sophisticated user management. We don't have sophisticated approvals workflows. We don't have single sign-on integrations. We don't, like, the things that enterprises need and expect. Now, as we start going in that direction, we will reprioritize literally every month the features that we know will make that easier, both from a sales perspective, but really from a customer happiness perspective. So it's a combination of the two. The product looks very different depending on who you're selling to, though. Meaning, if we decided we're only selling to Fortune 500 companies, we'd build something different than if we also want to cater to a Series B, hypergrowth company. So it's important to know the who.
Got it. Okay, coming to last couple of questions. I know we haven't defined GTM yet, but I'm still going to ask this question. Who would be your first go-to-market hire? I want to ask this question to almost everyone to understand, like, as a business, like, depending on, you decide, SLG, PLG, or is it just always going to be the same person? So I'm curious, Kathleen, you can start, and then Jaspar.
Sure. I was just going on my soapbox earlier about GTM. I feel like sales teams have taken over the term GTM. It is not just sales, it is the combination of sales, marketing, and customer success. So it's how do we drive demand, how do we capture that demand, and then how do we set these people up for success. I think that matters across any type of motion you have. The makeup of the team will be very dependent upon the DNA of the founders, the DNA of the team, who you're selling to, what your go-to-market motion is. I think you should not hire anyone on the go-to-market side, whether it's a marketer, a salesperson, or a customer success person, until you have some sense of what your go-to-market motion is going to look like, because the profile that you're going to hire is so different across all three of those. I spent the last 4 years helping probably 100 plus companies hire or at least have conversations about hiring their first marketer. And I have a lot of strong opinions. We wrote a bunch about stuff about this at Market One, but I think the biggest takeaway for me was, if you are a top-down enterprise motion, you hire a marketer who has experience in that business model. If you're a product-led growth company and more bottoms-up or self-serve or whatever you want to call it, hire a marketer who's used to doing that. If you're a hybrid motion, hire someone who has experience in that. I think it's relevant across not just marketing, but across sales and customer success. If the go-to-market motion impacts the work that you do, the teams that you collaborate with, where you focus. And so my biggest advice to founders is hire someone who has experience in your go-to-market motion. It's far more important than your specific industry or vertical. Like, if you're selling to construction, you don't need someone coming from construction, but you need someone who is used to an audience who is more offline. They don't spend all day on LinkedIn or Product Hunt, but they're like, find their information in different places. It's just different channels, different content, different ways of reaching them. And so I think having experience in the type of go-to-market motion that your product is using is so impactful for any go-to-market hire. And that's like the fail mode I see over and over, because it's so different. It's like the difference between consumer and B2B. Like, it's that different, I think, even within kind of B2B.
I had a thought based on like kind of my narrow experience, and I'm curious if it resonates for everybody else. Like, in the early days, as you said, you need to figure out what your go-to-market is. And you're going to probably do a lot of different motions. And you're probably going to think, unless your background is in go-to-market, and I'm shit at all of these. But one, you can decide and instantly switch motions. And two, as a founder, you have superpowers in every single go-to-market motion. You're writing content, you have the power that it comes from the founder. If you're selling, you have the power that you can just build what the customer wants, right? Like, you can like promise it and deliver it, like right there in the call. Like, in every aspect, like, yes, maybe your craft isn't as great as somebody who's a professional in that discipline, but you have this expert advantage, which is that you're a founder, you have full context of the business, you can make decisions on the fly. And I think, yeah, I think you should like avoid hiring GTM as long as possible.
I think that it cracks me up when I hear founders who are like, oh, we did all this with no marketing. I'm like, do you have a website? Yes. Have you done LinkedIn? Do you do LinkedIn? You post? It's like the founder is the first go-to-market hire, and you need to wrap your head around that. Like that is my job, is to bring this product to market. And so, like think about that. You do have superpowers. You can 10x, and your team will support that. But the strength of the founders on go-to-market is how your company is going to win on go-to-market, especially in the early days, because a lot of it is driven by the DNA of the founder.
So that's my strong opinion, strongly held, that if you are a founder and you don't want to sell, you're in the wrong job. If you're going to found a company, you must sell, and there's no way around it. I love your point about bringing on someone who has experience in the space.
I didn't say the space. I said the go-to-market motion. I actually think the expertise in the space matters less.
I think I agree with you. I think it's a bonus. I'll just switch this. Yeah, it's okay. For me, and this comes from a salesperson and a marketer, the most important first GTM hire as the founders are building that go-to-market motion is a customer success person. There is nothing that facilitates the flywheel of learning more than having somebody on the back end spending every single day with the customer and extending the founder's ability to be able to see what is happening within the customer lifecycle post-sale. Right? The founder is going to attack the top of the funnel, the middle, the middle of the funnel when it comes to pre-sale, and then they're going to go back out to the top of the funnel, right? For the most part. And great founders will figure out a way to kind of spread themselves. But another person who, hey, maybe knows the motion, B2B, enterprise, maybe even the space, but is able to collect that learning, report back, build ICP profiles, build implementation, success and failure stories, and inevitably build a motion in which customers get to value super fast is what everything else is built on when you talk about go-to-market fit. Right? And replicating really great customers that have found success within your product.
Why have most companies not done that?
Because most companies are stupid.
I kind of think a generalist is better as a first hire, because like someone who can help you, if you know what you're doing and if you know what needs to be done, then like a CSM is great, but they can only do like customer success if you've got like 10 customers. It's kind of pointless. And if you have early product market fit and you know what you need to scale, but like a generalist is a good first hire to pour fuel on what you're doing.
Well, I think the general consensus is we all have different opinions on this. But one thing I asked over 100 founders, first-time founders, hey, if you're starting your second company, what's one thing you do differently? The number one response I got was I would have hired CS earlier. And I can tell you also with us, 100% true. We did, it didn't work out, and so now the profile wasn't right. And I think it's also finding the right person as a first CS hire, especially if there's no go-to-market team, that's a hard job. It's a really hard job. And I think the profile of typical CS people, how do I say this? They tend to be extremely patient, extremely empathetic with the customer, but not necessarily that like driving sales DNA, like keeping up with founder-led sales. But I do think that's an important hire. But to the question of the first marketing hire, I wrote this article a long time ago that every company between seed and Series A, when they're bringing on their first marketer, is looking for a unicorn, and it's the same unicorn. It is a person who is a hybrid between a growth marketer and a product marketer. And quite frankly, I think that this can be taught. I actually went down this whole rabbit hole of starting like a reforge for first marketing hire because it was so consistent. On the VC side, every portfolio company came to me when they were building out the go-to-market motion. And when it came to the marketing discipline, they were all looking for the exact same profile. So much so that I literally had like a template that I could just send them of like, here's the things you should ask in an interview, here's the JD, all that. I think you need somebody who spikes on both of those things because those are what is critical. You have to nail the messaging to be able to resonate with your ICP, but then you have to figure out how to go find that ICP. And so I think it's a combination of those two skill sets. I think you can look for somebody who's done one of them and see if they have the aptitude for the other, because again, I think both can be taught. But I squarely agree with Kathleen on industry doesn't matter, because a good marketer is going to come with fresh eyes anyways, and they're going to learn about your space, learn about your product, and learn about your buyer.
To tie kind of everything everybody's saying together. Like I think maybe one thing that's behind all the different perspectives, which I kind of agree to some degree with all of them, is you gotta know your own shape really, really well. Like every founder is like a very different shape. And that's probably why people develop very strong preferences for one approach versus another.
I want a backspace. It's not because most companies are stupid. It's because of that, right? Most companies don't do the reflection and the internal work to be able to say, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. Most companies are undisciplined and they say growth matters more than anything right now, right? Ego, right? All of those, I guess, maybe could fit under the umbrella of stupidity. But no, this more than anything is most companies, I think, believe they know more than they actually know and move forward under that assumption.
Can I say that? I think investors are often very guilty of this. For any of the founders in the room, how many times is your investor in a board meeting or a catch-up and like, oh, one of my portfolio companies did this. Have you tried it? It used to happen to me all the time when I was in board meetings on the operating side. It drove me crazy because I'm like, well, this is why it worked for this company, because their founder, their product, their whatever, they had a secret sauce. So the way I think about it is like, think in templates and frameworks and not playbooks. Don't take someone else's playbook, figure out a template around things, and then apply it and customize it for your unique shape and whatever your company is trying to do. And I think if your investors say that to you in board meetings or in any meeting, just say, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about why you think that would work here? Because I think that's so important. Because every company is different. And I think you need to figure out why your company exists, your unique take, your unique strengths on the go-to-market side that will help you win and exploit the hell out of them, because that's the only advantage you have as a startup, is that you can move faster. So play to your strengths.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like for us, we are an all-eng team, so it's very early to we haven't made our first GTM hire yet, but it will obviously be different for us because that is the strengths we have, and like we can deliver the product the same day and things like that. So all of that consideration as well. Okay, so my last question. We are in SF in 2024. I have to ask AI.
Check this.
Good for us.
So about AI, there's a lot of obviously myths. There's a lot of questions like, do we not need salespeople anymore? Is marketing going to be fully automated? All the controversial opinions. So I'd love everyone to talk a little bit about what they think about AI. How does that change go-to-market in general, also company building? So let's start with Jaspar.
Yeah, for sure. Fire everyone. No, we're trying to basically consolidate all of the tools and replace a lot of the human labor. It's like with outbound sales, our platform replaces tools like outreach, and info, like a bunch of other things. And we do nearly replace the role of a human BDR, like with the spray and pray BDRs. Like if you're doing something that anyone can do just with like an email address and like writing some content and it's like barely any research, it's very automatable. Like the role of the vast majority of outbound SDRs and inbound SDRs is so basic, and it's like they're using like Apollo or they're using Zoom Info, they're building a list, they're researching the leads, they're writing emails, sending them out, like it's very, very basic. But like the role of an AE isn't going to be replaced anytime soon. Like when you have to negotiate, you have to hop on a meeting, you have to have emotional intelligence, I think it's going to be impossible to replace that until we have like significantly more advanced AI. So I think in the immediate term, it's just maximizing the productivity of those kind of roles, like using tools like Otter AI and using tools that can make your AEs and people in your go-to-market stack more effective. But then like some other roles, like BDRs and SDRs, I don't know how much longer they're going to be around for.
I agree with you. I think SDRs and BDRs are going away. I think there's like, it's just...
I hope there are no SDRs and BDRs in the room.
And I think that it's actually going to become like a growth marketer who's like a programmatic growth marketer who ends up taking on that role and automating all of it. So I'm excited to try your product and send that to people, because I totally agree with that. I also think on the hiring side generally, I think go-to-market teams are going to get a lot smaller because you can do a lot more with a smaller team. I think the roles that you hire for are actually going to be a lot more generalist and people who are able to either
hire out tools like a Tofu or something else where, you know, one person can like manage a bunch of processes that used to take whole teams to do things. So the teams internally are going to be more generalists, people who are what I would dub like a modern marketer, but like comfortable trying new tools and technology. And then I think with all the layoffs and I think a lot of people going fractional, I actually think you're either going to hire a tool or you're going to hire like a super specialist in the things that you need to do, where the in-house teams are just going to be so much smaller. Because you can do it's like amazing. It's not all there yet, but you can imagine it's just getting better every month. And so I think the companies built today are going to be much smaller and leaner and more efficient, which is awesome. And I think you're going to see like the revenue per employee just skyrocket.
A total plus one on all that. I think tying it back to some of our previous discussion points, it's really interesting when you play it out, how it actually starts blurring the line between bottom-up self-serve PLG and actually top-down human-led sales. Because at some level, PLG is letting the code sell the product for you. And AI, more and more, is letting the code.
They really are.
And so, like, there's an interesting way in which, like, you talk to a salesperson and they're like, oh yeah, we could do that, but for 50K because it's so hard. We're going to put so many people against it. But now, maybe you don't have to put so many people against it. Maybe you have like one person architect to do some prompt engineering, and we can kind of make your good enough custom solution. In fact, literally, I was just talking to 11X is one of the companies we work with.
Our arch nemesis.
Yeah, sorry. But one thing that I'm sure that all of these AI SDRs are going to do is pretty much take that like cut line of like you must be this interesting to talk to an AE and like lower it tremendously. Like it's like under that it's like, okay, well we're not going to actually pick up the phone for you, but we actually have like a whole plan for you. We can have like our AI SDR reach out, answer your basic questions if you don't want to look through our website, and we can also like maybe cut you a deal based on some like targeting information that we've trained the AI on, and we'll actually like give you an automated sales deal. And that just wasn't possible before. And so I think there's kind of an interesting middle layer that's going to be possible in the next 6 to 18 months. And I think the exciting thing for customers is I think people will feel much more met for a much better price than they have before. Like previously, it's either like Walmart or Hermes. There's actually going to be a middle when it comes to these products as far as like level of service.
So I'm going to have a slightly different take in that I agree. SDR, BDR function goes away. I think the humans still will do the strategic and the creative, which that to me is neither. I actually think though, and I'm going to caveat this is like tech, not if you're selling to laundromats or doing like, blue collar, that type of sales. I think that's different. I think that these tools today are actually going to cause email as a channel has been dying, and it's continuing to get worse and worse with more people being able to push a button and spam as many people as they want for a very, very low cost. Phone, nobody picks up the phone anymore. I think people always joke that like the least used app on this is the actual phone app. So my take is actually the entire mix, like channel mix, changes dramatically. And we now, I don't know if there are going to be new channels that come up. I assume there will. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that there's going to be so much noise that there's going to be blindness to a lot of this AI personalization, a lot of the AI outreach, that kind of stuff. And so I think people will shift to things like, even our customers are shifting to events, in-person events, webinars, things like that. They're shifting to intense signals. So AI is very, very good at taking a lot of unstructured data and making sense of it. So as opposed to us going into Apollo or ZoomInfo and being like, broad filters, go and spam these people, we are going to look for more intent-based signals across everything, pull that data in and use that intelligently to go and reach them on the channels that they want to be reached. I think also what this looks like is, to Kathleen's point, smaller go-to-market team holistically, but marketing, or what is traditionally marketing or demand gen, owns way more of the funnel. And the customer can self-serve as much as they can, either via your website, via marketing collaterals or campaigns, via a chatbot on your site that has your entire knowledge base, and then at some point they're ready to talk to sales, and that's when the human relationship building, empathy, deal negotiation, and actually closing comes into play. So that's my take of the future.
I'm going to speak more at the startup ecosystem level, because we see basically all the quality launches. Yeah. A couple things. I think one, it's a platform shift. It feels very similar to mobile 2014, 2015. One interesting thing is that infrastructure feels far ahead of applications. And on the application side, it's easier than ever to make a really impressive demo or a really impressive initial app. And a lot of times those apps, there's a lot of work to do for those apps to really retain and have traction. And there are more builders than ever before for reasons that make sense. Like I said, the infrastructure is progressing at light speed. So what that means is it's harder and harder traction. But I think the way to look at that is it's very early. We recently launched a feature, shoutouts, which when you launch, we ask you, hey, what were the products that were indispensable? Partly because a lot of launches were starting to put their tech stack in their launch, and partly because we were curious, what are the top builders using? And from those, we're starting to see some really high trajectory companies. Supabase, probably a lot of people know, but they had something of a presence on Product Hunt through launches, but they have a crazy presence in shoutouts. We just released our top products based on shoutouts. Cursors climbing really, really fast. And so you can see, when you see the products that have actual traction, there are some applications that are getting serious traction. So I think it's really early, really promising, and applications are going to be applications with real, lots of new applications with real traction are going to be kind of the story of the next few years.
I'm struggling to find where I might be able to add some value here, because these are all really great points. So I'll close with some parenting advice. Teach your children how to ask questions, how to be empathetic, how to be with other humans, because for the most part, that will be what drives value in human-to-human interaction in the future. Yes, the SDR role is going away. And not only is the SDR role going away, but the amount of automation that is coming into the space is actually going to push the humans in the go-to-market roles to be better, right? And the ones who drive the most value, ideally through their empathy or their ability to get deeper into who that customer is and the value that it will drive, the value the product will drive to them, those will be the successful humans, and the automation will do the rest. Quick little plug, speaking about automation, if you want to send people down through an automated workflow and send them a deal based on how they use the product and it's custom for them, that's what Atlas does. So, but yeah, I would just say it's going to be an amazing future where really talented humans will thrive.
I just want to paint a picture. This is something I'm personally testing, and I'll give you guys kind of what I'm actually doing and how. But what I did was I created, if you guys know the company HeyGen, I gave them a sample of a video of mine, and I had them clone me and create a little avatar. I then used Tofu to grab trending content on LinkedIn from, there's 50 influencers we follow. So anything that they're posting or anything that they're linking to, we pull it into Tofu. It repurposes it into LinkedIn posts, and then I have it read those LinkedIn posts as me. So I can now automate this entire thing where it looks like video content on a channel where video content's now trending. I don't have to do anything. And that's 100% AI, which is pretty damn cool. There's just stuff like this that's early. If you knew me and you saw this, you might know that it was AI generated. But if you didn't, you might not. And I just think that that's just the tip of the iceberg of where this stuff is going for people that are creative. And at some point, once the applications evolve more, it'll get productized and everyone will be doing it. But I think right now there's some pretty cool stuff that you can actually do if you try.
Just adding one more pretty cool thing that my app also does when you try it is actually to prepare for tonight. I literally took the questions that we were thinking about, and I just put them into Otter, and it scanned everything I've said and everything is said in my company over the last year or two, and it came up with 70% right answers.
And like that was my preparation, just taking all the voice data, like, terabytes of data of things I've said. And it's like, this is how you approach AI go-to-market. I'm like, that is how I've been approaching it. And then if you take that and feed it into like an AI avatar, you suddenly like, just by like existing and talking and integrating with the right AI tools, you've just auto-created your marketing campaign.
Love that. That's cool. That's so cool.
Okay, awesome. So now let's open the floor to audience questions. If anyone has questions, I can pass the mic.
Hi everyone, my name's Charlie Belfiore. I'm a director in a hedge fund in London. First of all, I wanted to thank the panel and the organizers. It's been a really insightful session. My question is for some of the panel members with investment backgrounds, and it is, what's your view on AI company valuations at the moment? From an outside perspective, it seems a bit frothy, and I can see there's a lot of potential in the space, but I think the economic value which they've brought to the table has maybe not been pari passu with some of the multiples that are being paid for the tickets at the moment. So I just wanted to get your view on that.
Any particular company you have in mind asking this question?
Most companies, AI companies raising at the moment.
It's an interesting question. We had this discussion actually at Pear a couple weeks ago. To your point around it being a platform shift, I have not seen a company in the last year that I've been in, probably the last year and a half, that isn't an AI company in some form. Like they're using AI in some form of their company. They may not be an AI infra company, they may be an application company, but they're using AI to some extent. So to your question of like, there's frothiness. There's always frothiness though in some sector. I think in a lot of ways venture is hypey, it goes up, it goes down. I started working in tech in 2007. I was working at Facebook, the markets crashed 08, 09. How many of you were around for that? It was like a pretty brutal time, but also a great time for building. Then we went through like some glory years, then some down years. So I think all these things are pretty cyclical. People said, when I joined Facebook, Microsoft invested $250 million at what was the valuation? Maybe 10? Yes, a couple $1 billion. People thought they were crazy. DST came in, they thought they were crazy. All those people made a ton of money. So I think in a lot of ways, yes, there's always frothiness. This has been going on for many cycles, so I think we're in a cycle.
I guess Facebook is 1 out of hundreds, right? So.
No, but I think so that's one example. I think there's always been companies that have been overhyped and overvalued, and some of them live up to that and some don't. So yes, I think that if you slap AI onto your company, or if you're like coming out of one of these PhD programs, you've written papers on AI, like you're gonna get a higher valuation. But what I'm saying is, yes, that's happening, but I think this happens in the same way, what was it, 3 years ago with Web3, everyone was saying that actually was a hype cycle. But I think that AI is like a fundamental platform shift, so time will tell if some of these companies were worth it or not. I think it's like still pretty early days. I think the infra side is much further along than the application side. A year and a half ago, I was seeing every company was like a GPT layer on top of something, and I think some of those companies, the early ones that got invested in, had no differentiation, and my big thing was like, how are you built this in a month, you got some customers, what's stopping like a Gong or an Otter or someone who has much more distribution than you from adding these AI components and they already have the customer relationship? I actually think it's the distribution side from an application layer is very challenging if what you're building is not differentiated, because these larger companies who already have the relationship with the customer can just build a lot of this stuff and they already can add it on to their existing distribution channels. So I don't know, I think time will tell. You could talk to 10 investors and you'll get 10 different answers. But yeah, some valuations are high.
And I think there's a difference between the infra layer and the application layer. And at the infra layer, there will be a few winners, but not a lot. I mean, even if you look at like computing, like cloud compute platforms, and I get that a lot of these are arms of larger behemoths, but you have three. You have Azure, you have GCP, and you have AWS. There are three winners. I guarantee you there were a billion other ones that were trying for that same pie, but that pie is huge. And so I think what investors are seeing now, or essentially the bet is there are going to be a couple gigantic winners at the infra layer. We need to be in one. And I think that the valuations are reflecting that craziness and also the competitive nature of we need to be in one. At the lots of FOMO. At the application layer, my strong belief is that in the short term, the companies that will win on workflow. So laser focus on a specific persona and understanding their workflows and nailing the workflows using, and I think I'm going to differentiate generative AI versus everything else. And generative AI, what I mean by that is fundamentally the infrastructure of your company is prompts feeding into an LLM. Very hard for a company, even started in 2019, to re-architect to that architecture. Like, it is a different way of building a product in a company. But for companies, Gen AI, nail the workflow in the short term, nail the data in the long term. So the moats to be had are no longer around like distribution, no longer around things like product or fundamentally access to like LLMs. But in the long run, if you have a unique or can aggregate a unique data set, you can do more interesting things with the AI.
The other thing about it is that, like, I think the large economic pitch is effectively like what market are you approaching with this? And like, I think like if you look at steam power in like the late 1800s, it's like, how many things could possibly be steam powered? Like, what's the market of this? And the market is actually all human labor, right? It's like everything a human like picked up, put down, hit with an axe. It's all of it could be replaced and was by steam power. And I'm using it as a like pretty much like the industrial revolution, right? Like everything got mechanized over the following like 50, 80 years or something like that. And so like pretty much it's like, oh yeah, what can you use AI for? It's like literally everything that humans do with their brain, which is like pretty much like the rest of human endeavor. And so like that's the pitch. And like we're eating up like little, like human manipulating text or voice in like a simple way. Like those are the first things to go. But like, that's just kind of like, ripping out the bottom of the sack. And it's like all of the things that humans do with their mind, including probably the people in this room, if you fast forward like, 10, 20. So that's the pitch of like, like if you're getting into railroads in 1850, like, there's just a tremendous amount there. And so the money will come, is my take on it.
Great. Just a counterpoint to what Elaine said on infrastructure. Maybe this is, I'm pivoting away from like valuations to just like the market opportunity. And maybe this is just me being a naive optimist, but like in developer tools, for example, I mean, developers are more highly leveraged, every day. And the build versus buy decision is just going to buy, like in every case. I feel like there's kind of an unlimited opportunity there, but also just more generally, I feel like with the platform shift, every category is up for grabs now.
I totally agree. I think like there's advantages everywhere. Like I think this is the most exciting time to be building things because I think we aren't going back. The world is moving forward, and I think, to your point, the total addressable market here is just massive. And so, yeah, I am also an optimist. I think that's the fun part of working in tech. You have to be an optimist and like believe in that the future is going to be better. And I think I'm very excited for the next few years.
Not coming from a venture background, but someone who can't wait to be overlorded by robots. The metric that I would watch is less on, the metric I would watch to try to determine valuation is less on the growth, but on the retention that the AI companies that are coming out now have. Less so much at the infra level, more at the application level. I mean, it's software in general, but specifically in a highly competitive, less differentiated space. Those who are able to keep customers, retain customers, and boost NRR are going to be the winners in the long run. And you can start to get a sense of that, earlier on, but it does take a little bit of time.
There's a metric going around of like ERR, experimental recurring revenue. Like, so a lot of companies have like, probably because they launch on Product Hunt, they like see this massive growth and then the churn they like drop off a cliff. And so as an investor, we're looking at retention and like, is that continuing to go or are you falling off a cliff? Because I think a lot of people are eager to try things, but how much of that revenue is real revenue versus just experimental revenue?
Yeah, and I will say like that is very common with launches, and I think it's part of the learning process. It's like you want to kind of get through that as soon as possible, filter down to like who is your core ICP, and then build up from there. The doodle in Paul Graham's office is real. Like, I have a graph that looks like that. A lot of friends have graphs that look like that. Like, that's how good products are made often.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's not necessarily bad that, like, when I was at Intercom, every time we did a launch, we saw it go up and then it went down, but each bottom point was always higher than the next. And so the graphs don't always look like this, they're like this, but you just want them to directionally be going up and to the right.
Yeah, they're vantage points in an idea maze.
Right.
Like, you gotta learn somehow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So both for customer support as well as marketing, what's the right level of person to bring in? Because should you bring in senior people? Should you bring in ICs? Just love to get some thoughts around.
I have a lot of strong opinions here. Not a CMO to start. I've met so many founders who are like, oh, our marketing leader didn't work out. And I'm like, they're like, we hired a CMO at the seed stage. I'm like, oh, well, not product market fit there. I think it's like Goldilocks. It's like senior enough where they've seen enough where they can be strategic, but not so senior that they expect a huge team. They need to be hands-on and execution focused. And so from my experience, it's like 4-ish at least, maybe at minimum 4 to 5 years, not more. I mean, some senior people can still be hands-on, but I think you have to describe the job as like you are an IC to start and maybe you grow into this role. But I think expectation setting is so important. And what you want to do is make sure, like I said, they can build a plan, build a strategy, and then execute that strategy. Because what you don't want, if you hire too junior, they're gonna do a bunch of stuff, which Emily always called like random acts of marketing. I call it like the peanut butter strategy, like you're trying to do everything. You need to have someone who can set a strategy, say no to things, because there's always gonna be more to do than time to do it, but they can set a strategy and then also execute that strategy. And both of those things are super important. You can't hire anyone in your first like 20, some would argue 50 employees who aren't hands-on. Like everyone is doing something, even if they're managing a team, they're still doing IC work. And so find people who love startups, love rolling up their sleeves, love building things, but make sure they have enough experience. And then my other thing, you need someone who knows what great looks like. If they've never seen great, oftentimes it's hard to create it. So I always ask, like, what companies do you think are doing like marketing well? Who do you look up to? Some of them may have not had the opportunity to work there, but they have to be great, know what great is at least, and what they should aspire to be.
I'm going to go back to my original point, like from a different take, which is it depends. You have to really know your shape and what hire and what shape of hire is going to have like the biggest impact on success for your company or de-risk the biggest thing. For my last company, Virtual Office, we knew we needed to go head-to-head with Zoom. Our first hire was the guy who built FaceTime. Like, very hard person to find, full-on exec recruiting his first hire. Like, we eventually built our own stack, like we had a big run during the pandemic. The rest was harder, but like, in that case, like, we had all the other pieces. What we didn't have was audio-video expertise. And if you're fortunate enough to have the resources to get these really, really special people, there's some startups and some moments and some founding teams where you really just have like a missing person, almost like a missing co-founder. And you should just go and fill that as soon as possible.
Did you give them co-founder like equity to close them, or close?
It was high.
Yeah.
but it was not as crazy as you think, because like, if you're trying to build a new audio video stack, there are not many companies willing to do that. And these are people who have made, have had their career, have made money. Like, they want to do something new. So you can get like crazier people than you might think in the early stages.
And my take is actually very similar to Rajiv. I actually think that you have to analyze where the founder is extremely opinionated. And it's actually not even necessarily where they're really strong, because where you have an opinionated view on strategy, if you hire somebody who also is going to own strategy, you will immediately butt heads and explode. So what I like to do is look at where do the founders want to own for the foreseeable future. And depending on that, let's say like in my example, I come from a go-to-market background. I am going to own the go-to-market strategy for the foreseeable future. I am anchoring on a young, sharp, high horsepower hustler. Like, I would actually rather hire somebody more junior that has a lot of potential, where I can guide and I can give them bumper lanes. Now, there are other parts of our company where the co-founders, we don't have strong opinions and we're not that strong. I would much rather hire somebody who is going to be the exact profile that Kathleen said, of like a doer for sure, but somebody who has at least 4 years of experience and knows what good looks like. So I don't have to babysit them, but also I am going to trust them to do a 10x better job than me at that function. So I think the first analysis is, where are you guys going to own and what are you going to be opinionated on, and then where are you not?
On that point, one of the things that I found that's actually counterintuitive, I ask every founder who's trying to hire a marketer in particular, I'm like, what are your strong opinions on marketing? What do you care about? Make sure that your marketer is really good at those things. Don't hire actually into your weaknesses, because you will never offload any of that stuff and you will hate the stuff they do if they're not excellent at the stuff that you actually care about. And those are the things that you're gonna win on in marketing, are the things that your founding team is actually very good at. So we have one company we invested in, my previous fund, where the founders are designers. And they needed to find a marketer who had a very good eye for design. Not every company necessarily needs that. Like, everyone has to be good enough at enough things, but they needed to find someone who like shared that taste. At other companies, it's like writing is so important. You need someone who's like a very concise writer. Make sure that they spike where you care about, because otherwise it will drive you crazy.
Agreed.
I love that point.
Just to connect a few of these points together, you just have to have an incredibly clear plan and like fully trust the person at a certain level for the things you're hiring for them for. I think the biggest failing, if you kind of reverse some of this advice, is hiring someone to do something that you don't understand. Like if you're like, I don't know how marketing works, you're an experienced marketer, go market for me, like you're gonna have a bad time. And so like, you know, in this example, you realize that, oh, we almost are missing a co-founder. We're gonna like really go deep, find the perfect person, comp this person, but this is how they fit into the puzzle, like in a perfect way. Or they're gonna be our marketer, but they're gonna do marketing that I understand already. Like I figured it out enough, and like this person's gonna superpower me. But like the plan of like how this person's gonna operate is definitely in the founder's head. It's kind of like laying out like a studio apartment. Like everything has to have an exact position that exactly matches everything else. You know, yeah, it's not just like, you know, like three good things, like they have to actually work well together.
Okay, so question for the panel. How do you hire somebody great in a domain that you're not great in?
You go meet great people and see what great looks like.
And you go find the other, I learned this from somebody, this is not mine, so I will not take credit, but you go and find, like Kathleen was saying before, the companies that are known, like categorically to be the best at that function, and you go and find people that worked for the number one or number two. So if you're gonna hire at the like a little bit down, they're the people who worked under the best, but also are hungry and gonna climb in their career.
Back channel.
Yeah, like to what people have said, I like to find somebody who could have been the perfect hire like 5 years earlier in their career and could hire this position, and just have a conversation with them about like, hey, I'm thinking about hiring this position. Like, one, am I thinking about this in the right way? What does good look like? How would you hire for this position? Do you know anybody who'd be good for this position? Hey, crazy idea. Do you want to come join and do this? And you know, you learn what good looks like, and sometimes you find a great candidate.
And sometimes those people say yes. So you never know. Shoot your shot.
But sometimes they're not doers anymore.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of those conversations though with people who'd be like, oh, I'm trying to hire on the marketing side, and then like I would give them a lot of the feedback that I said here, and then I would, like once I understood what they need, I'd send them good people.
Yeah, I think hiring is definitely one of the hardest jobs as a founder, and to your point, like finding people who are good at something you don't even know how to judge, and you don't know how will you be able to judge as they're going along, will you be able to trust them at the job? It is definitely going to be difficult. I know we had one last question. Somebody had raised their hand, and then you want to go ahead?
Thanks so much. I have a bunch of notes from all of you guys, so this is really helpful for me. But my background is in direct marketing, so I'm more used to just like face-to-face interactions, and I'm kind of new to this space where I'm essentially going out and marketing a SaaS product. So I know some of you guys, like Jaspar, have briefly touched on it and how he got his first customers by rage baiting on Reddit. I'm curious, for those CEOs, for those growth marketers, what have kind of been those strategies that have worked for you guys in terms of creating as many impressions as possible? so that they actually have a chance to check out your product. Like, do you guys have any special copy tips, any kind of phrases that you like to use when talking to people? Curious about what that is.
Can you say what the product is again? Like, and what's the product, who's the buyer, and then like how many current customers or users do you have?
Oh, currently? So much of that information I actually don't know because I was just onboarded really recently, which is why I'm out here to kind of understand how to be able to create more impressions. But a little bit about the product. It's kind of a SaaS product that helps auditors in optimizing the copy and pasting of their data from documents onto like a spreadsheet.
So it's like a very specific, it's a very specific industry, a very specific role.
Yes, so a very specific role of, I guess, auditors as well as investment bankers who are working a lot between spreadsheets and documents.
I'd say you have to go to where they are. I don't think it's necessarily about maximizing just general impressions. I don't know if people have other.
Yeah.
So there's probably like 10 companies that like have a ton of auditors. Go target them with ads on LinkedIn, figure out what blogs they read, what podcasts they listen to, what publications they subscribe to, like those type of things. It's just really doing analysis, like go talk to 50 of them and literally ask those questions. Go like, what books do you read? What blogs do you follow? What influencers do you follow? Do you go on LinkedIn? Just ask a bunch of dumb questions.
Yeah, and steal their language. So like talk about it in the way that they talk about it. Like have your customers pitch other customers, and they'll probably frame things in a different way. Like like talk about how it fits in their life in a different way, and that can be even more powerful and natural.
Yeah, when you get a customer to that, past that magic moment in the promise, like where they get what you're building, it's like, okay, cool, like what's the main benefit you see in this? How do you describe this to a friend? Like who do you think this would be good for?